Consortium. Today is June 24th, and we are at the offices of the Northeast Ohio Area-Wide Coordinating Agency. Welcome, and thank you very much for your patience. I am Grace Amici. I'm the Executive Director of NOACA and the Chair of NEOSCC.
Howard Morrison, Executive Director of NEOSCC.
We go back to language.
Will Davian, City of Youngstown.
John Getchie, State Regional Council.
Sarah Leonard, East Cape.
Ron Short, Youngstown State University.
Sarah Meyer, Midland Metro Parks. We're both Fleet, RTA.
Amber Manchuk, Lorraine County Community College.
Abby Burke, County County.
Emily Campbell, the Center for Community Solutions.
Mike Challenger, Lee County Growth Partnership.
Mike Lyons, RPI.
Gene Nixon, Summit County Public Health.
Angie Byington, City of Elyria.
Jason Secretary, Ambulance.
Great, thank you. The first item on our agenda is the approval of the meeting minutes of May 23rd, 2014. Do I have a motion?
Second.
Second? Any discussion?
The spelling error. Oh, it was corrected in this version, never mind.
Okay. I have a motion and a second. No further discussion. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Next, we have an item that actually we broke up into two items in the executive committee, requesting your approval of a 90-day extension for both the terms of the current officers as well as the executive director's contract, although that is slightly amended. The executive committee did discuss and approve for recommendation to this body both of those items. The extension is recommended because although the grant is closed as of the end of this month, the actual closeout period is 90 days after, so there are still some activities related to the closeout of that grant with HUD that NOACA, because we are the designated grantee, we're undertaking that, but it would be beneficial to the organization if we could have an extension to both of those items for continuity. Also, at the same time, we are trying to transition the organization to NEOSCC 2.0, and although we had hoped that it would be in better shape in terms of being able to transition perhaps in July, at this point we are not fully ready for that transition either. So as a result of both the 90-day closeout period and some further work that needs to happen relative to the closeout, we're recommending that 90-day extension. The officers is a no-cost extension, so it's just a matter of allowing the officers to continue to be officers for 90 more days to the end of the September 30th period. The extension of the term of the executive director's contract would be an extension with a change to limit the time commitment to 2 days a week as opposed to a full-time 5 days a week. And also, it would be pending budget availability. Currently, the grant has no funds left in it, so anything that's related to cost, which the executive director's contract extension would be about an $11,000 cost, would need to come out of our future funds, basically the dues, subscriptions. And at this point, we have sent out about $64,000 worth of invoices. We've received about $7,000 to date, with a couple of more checks, I'm told, in the mail. Therefore, we feel confident that we would probably be able to live up to that contract extension. Nevertheless, we still would like to put the language in there to protect the organization should the funds not be available in the budget. discussion?
Grace, the invoices, were they mailed to all of the organizations? And I don't recall seeing one, so I'm just kind of curious as to like who they were mailed to. Board member or? Oh, you got it? Okay.
It's a designated approval.
So they were mailed to all 33 of the board members. Correct.
We sent yours to church.
Where are we still looking at the system?
So we've received some cash. In fact, I want to acknowledge and congratulate Mike Lyons as an individual for being the first to have submitted a check. So he is our first official member of NEOSCC 2.0. And I think we should give him a round of applause for that.
Once again, when they did the title, Mr. Checkers, the leader.
I thought Freddie did this check.
When were the invoices mailed out? Approximately.
10 days ago.
Okay.
Yeah, I think we sent that to you. No,
Yeah.
Today? Okay.
Yeah, and I think they did receive it.
And we,
Oh, you talked, okay.
we want to send having a bad address going out, so that
Okay. Yeah, we've had issues with that.
Are those all cash invoices or those in kind too?
Those are cash invoices.
Okay, that's-
Certainly those who, I think I noted in the letter that if you have booked in kind.
It's on my desk, but I didn't.
As long as you remember.
I just want to see the reaction.
And Don and I did talk about it, he just forgot. He knew the dollar value.
That's why we keep answering here. There's somebody saying representing our own capital. No, I think we all recognize that there are cycles, billing cycles, and in some cases legislative approval cycles. We're reasonably optimistic. People will come forward, and if not, we'll have discussions.
So the membership dues solicitations that have gone out are for annual
Yes.
memberships. And we're talking about spending $11,000 possibly in 3 months. And there have been 64,000 for the whole year. So just wondering what, kind of next steps continuing to move on that front as it transitions to NEOSCC 2.0, maybe that's for a later point.
No, great question, particularly relative to the dues. The 64,000 are the invoices based on existing board membership. There are other dues that have been paid, like Mr. Lyons, who is separate and apart from that, as well as we are also soliciting new organizations. So hopefully we would be much beyond $64,000. That being said, certainly it is noteworthy that one of the first tasks of the new board, as well as perhaps part of the transition, is to develop a budget for the whole year to determine what kinds of activities need to happen with the new organization and to assure that the dues are being best utilized in that capacity.
I think we sent out with everybody the dues schedule, which suggests that there may be some higher levels of competition, which is where we get the key piece. From a development perspective, what we hope for is that we have 100% participation of existing board members, or they decide to elect us as a different right, not to continue. But getting, I think, Grace, when you go and sit down with folks in the business community, with this body that's emptied up, wants to play this game, that's a big statement of confidence. See that any number of boards have said 100% board member participation is one of the key things on what says ESCO. Over the next, over July, as part of the money, but it's be about the conference. Because that 66 needs to leverage. As you recall, we had budgeted or estimated the strategy design group a reasonably robust organization at $305,000. So this is a down payment. It's based on minimal staffing to keep things moving or to provide some outside consulting design. So doing so. Really is designed to say we pay all this wonderful foundations and connections.
And I think it's also noteworthy that it's noteworthy that we discussed the 90 days extension period allows for the 2 days a week or up to $11,000. Certainly, if we're able to close it out earlier and make the transition earlier, we would not incur all of the cost. Yes, thank you.
This question, I don't support this, but the work as a board member needs to get done. So it's going to get done regardless of what happens, right? As a board member, we need to know that it's done. Fiscal agent, it's going to get done. Right?
As fiscal agent, it's going to get done. I mean, NOACA is the responsible party for closing out the grant. It is simply, of course, much easier as well as most appropriate to have Hunter participate in that, but it will get done. And based on my conversations with my finance person, we're already in very good shape in that regard. So we're close to being able to close out far earlier than the 90 days. There are some other requirements relative to reporting that's non-financial that Hunter has to do as well.
There are a few outstanding reports. One of the things we would like to be able to do is get 100% up-to-date records of all people who are participating in the in-kind. Not to say we need the in-kind, but I think it's an impressive measure of effort. Part of what we use going forward, say, we almost double our required in-kind. Sarah did a phenomenal job of tracking it, but we have some lagging organizations, some like Summit County, leaders in some of their part of what we were talking, as I talked to Steve about, part of the reason for using this period is to make sure it's a complete full suite. And then as he goes through his review, if there's any questions, we have answers to those questions. We'll be here in the first week of July, I'll deliver what we have, which by that much will be around 95% some of these projects. But he's just getting done with the grants that close in December, first year grants that close in December. So he's encouraged us to keep some of the models level of capacity so that we can perform better and better over this period.
So do you still want us to send in kind?
We're looking at the end of the first quarter of this year. So to pick up things like, well, Connie's work took place in the first quarter. I think the last full report we did was last year. So yes, send it in. Don't go beyond the first.
The first quarter?
Yeah, first quarter. That's essentially what the grant, the work, the heavy work, which was used to match the money. We are shot first. But you can't get it yet because it's an impressive amount of work. Part of the story.
Any further discussion? All in favor? And actually, we took these as two separate votes in the executive, so I'd like to do the same here. Although I had a motion for both of them, didn't I? So we can do it together in this group. So we've got a motion on the table for both the extension of the terms of the current officers and the executive director's contract, although amended to a limited time of 2 days per week, pending budget availability and up to $11,000. All in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries. Great, thank you very much. Next for discussion is the more intimate details regarding the 90-day work plan. I think that we have a pretty good idea of what has to happen relative to the closeout of the grants. We need to zip up all of the financials. Most of that work is NOACA's responsibility, along with input from Hunter, and then the other kinds of reporting and meeting with HUD folks to turn over the final materials. Did you want to add anything specific to that?
No, on the again, on the federal side, we will be delivering those materials. Steve will be reviewing them and anticipates everything being at the end of the year. We should, or at the end of September. You should know, just in terms of what's going on in Washington, I had one conversation with Steve yesterday. The office is now the Office of Resilience, and it is under the Office of Community Planning and Development, which is a group that handles the water line, is now in the Secretary's office. So there's some ambiguity about what they do next. I think it's important that we have, that's where we have to report, and you're just, even from the DC perspective, it sits on the shelf, as a uncontroversial document. I think we've done all that we requested. I'm likely to go to DC probably sometime in the summer, because it's really because the new director of that office is a colleague of mine, basically in Washington, D.C. And Steve will be out here in July, but he's also spending some time out in college for the CT. So that's a piece that we talked. This discussion on the 90-day work plan was really a discussion with the executive committee level, and very soon I'm going to sort of open it up and revisit it. But it's very clear that between now and the end of September, we have to have working together a conclusion on the organization development and have an organization in place that can move forward to carry out. It's probably not the same organization we have today, because this was put together to do a plan, and a very successful plan. How it gets implemented is part of the debate, because it's not obvious. We discussed it. How much what happens at the metro level, what happens at the regional level, some of the tools and things you've seen that we're doing, build on the work that we've done. We talked to Jason about the communications and engagement assets that we have, and almost 900 champions, and how do we communicate with those, how do we keep that piece alive. Grace, you and John talked about the framing with the role of the business community in this, and some help that you have been offered from Tom Walmart, TPO, who's really a counterpart business collaboration, to frame the issue around why is it important business. We felt that in the winter around what we're doing, and they were quite enthusiastic to give us some phone calls.
So to update the board on activities related to the transition to NEOS 2.0. Many of you may have seen the article in Crane's Cleveland Business about the continuing of this organization and trying to recruit some business folks. We have had, I didn't really expect to have a board member interest as a result of the article, but that has been the case. I've been contacted by a few folks who are interested in the organization and interested in helping us to succeed and move forward. So we will meet with those folks. I've also, as Hunter indicated, been meeting with Tom Waltermeyer of Team NEO, who represents 18 counties for Jobs Ohio and other business attraction activities. And Tom has been very helpful in trying to frame the organization and and the pitch to the business community as to why would they want to join the board of NEOSCC, why would they want to even join the organization, how would they be able to advance the vision, and what would their efforts entail. A lot of it being very results oriented, so that's been very helpful. He's also been very helpful in putting me together with some other folks in the business community. So I probably have about half a dozen or so meetings set up to continue to talk about board membership. And in that regard, we have tried to think about these communication documents that we could use for solicitation. And Jason and Mike and myself will be meeting after this meeting to sort of determine how we can bring some closure to that. And to that end, if anybody would like to participate in that, please stay after the meeting. So Jason Segany, Mike Lyons, who is the chair of the Communications Engagement Workstream, and myself, we've done a little bit of brainstorming. We need to do a little bit more and integrate some of the helpful comments that Tom Waltermeyer has given me, and anything else that folks want to wrap up in there. And I'd like to have some official communication documents prepared for when we sit down with potential board members, particularly those from the business community. Also to that end, at this point my meetings have been just one-on-one and relatively informal. There will be a point in the near future, as soon as we finish with the communication document, that there'll have to be some official meetings with some of these folks, and I'm going to need board member participation. So if you're interested in being part of those meetings, you can contact me. Also, if I think that you will be helpful in those meetings, I will contact you. Certainly in some of the cases, depending on where the business is located, some of you could be much more instrumental than myself as chairperson talking to those folks. Also, I'd like you to give some thought to potential board members in your sphere of activity to determine what the composition of the board should look like. At this point, also, we've talked very heavily about this existing board and ensuring that we're inviting the members of this board to participate in the new board should they so wish. So subsequent to this meeting, I will be sending out a formal communication to all 33 board members requesting that they think about whether or not they want to participate as a board member in the future organization, or if they're perfectly happy as a member or some other kind of role. But it's important to get a good feel for if there are any folks from the existing board, particularly those who have been with us the whole time and worked very hard to get us where we are, to continue to maintain that investment. We want to balance the board with some kind of public-private partnership, but we want to make sure that we have that investment that's already been made leveraged. So we will send out those communications, think about it, and respond to that communication. The other thing that I have been working on is following up with the strategic doing work partnership that we entered into with Purdue University. So I went out to Purdue for a few days to participate in a strategic doing workshop. And actually it was several people from all over the country. We're joking that they were from one end of the continent to the other. We had somebody from Massachusetts all the way to California, and we had someone from Florida all the way to Alaska. So we had a nice big X on the North American continent. Had a few Canadians as well. So it was a very good workshop, and all of those folks are engaged in the same kinds of activity we are. Some of them have interesting challenges because they're dealing with a regional program that they have to implement, but actually don't even have the resources we have in terms of the large network that we've put together. So some of them are a little bit earlier in the phase of development of their action plans. It was a very good, good workshop. As part of that, I was able to interact and visit the regional center and build more of our partnership with the actual staff of the center. And I will say that I was very, very impressed. The workshop as well as the center, I don't think I had an appreciation for their value until I went out there myself. I would say as we were doing the strategic, doing kind of breakout groups here, certainly it was a valuable exercise, but there's actually much more to that than just those exercises. One is that they have access to lots of partnerships that deal in grant and grant making, and so they've made available to us, I think, a list of about 28 organizations that will be making grants over the course of the next year in areas that could benefit the advancement, could benefit us advancing either the individual efforts of our organization relative to NEOSCC or as the entire organization. And I believe 8 of those 28 are currently actively soliciting for grants. So we will be distributing. So we'll be passing that on so you can think about it both from how your organization could use any of those grants to advance activities related to NEOSCC, regionalism, or something that we could do as an organization. Also, what I found to be extremely exciting about that work that we're doing with Purdue is they have a tool that they have developed through a grant from EDA, Economic Development Administration, that it's a GIS mapping tool that has just about every data item you could think of, whether it's census, whether it's employment data, whether it's industry nodes, whether it's Bureau of Labor Statistics data, DOT data. There's all kinds of things in there, and beautifully graphically represented, coast to coast. It's the entire United States, and it's live data, so it is up to the date whatever is out there and publicly accessible. It feeds into that, and then we would be able, and they're willing to do this for us, to put it into a usable form that overlays our data. So we'll take all the NEOSCC data and take those shape files and overlay it to their map and allow us then to use that map, which I've never seen anything like this. It was actually pretty cool, where you could go into the map and you take sort of like a pencil and you draw a line and say, this is my corridor. And it populates it with everything that's going on in that corridor, from every kind of economic development, transportation, labor, population data thing you could think of. And it was pretty impressive. We talked at the executive committee that the 4 NPOs will get together and make a priority, having our GIS folks work with them to go ahead and get our data set up in their system. They've told us we can keep the data ourselves on our own server if we'd like to keep it separate from theirs and just use it as the overlay, or we can have them house it either way. So we'll have the technical staff determine what's the easiest and best for us. But that tool, for the MPOs, I know it's something that we definitely will use, and I think for many of our other members, particularly business members, will find it very, very useful as well. Chambers of Commerce will find it extremely useful. And there is nothing else like it in the country. It's a new tool, and they said that once we get everything together with our staffs here, I think it'll take them about a week to put it all together for us. So we're talking about something I think we can do in the short term, and perhaps even use it as part of the marketing of the organization. Purdue University, they have a Center for Regional Development. And as I said, I didn't really have an appreciation for what this center does and for the work that they've done till I went up there. But they've got a beautiful center and a new building and a new part of campus that's called Discovery Park, that is all about business and private sector partnerships and research, and they've got quite a bit of resources to do it. And their grant from the EBA, which is what they use to build this tool, includes Cleverly includes Northeast Ohio, but it includes Indiana, Illinois, Wisconsin, and Northeast Ohio. So we are part of the grant, and so we're able to do this for us.
Well, that's a massive drop. So that's one of the state funds to work with us.
I told them they could probably sell subscriptions to that.
So I think we talked a lot about a number of things, including working with Purdue to get grant information out to you. Time goes on, exploring the regional decision maker as a real live tool. It is scalable to the metro levels, on the scale down to the county level. It can be some corridors. It's a very powerful tool, and it will ramp up our speed with we can actually do stuff with the data curriculum. I think we need to put together a tight work program. I'll be away for the next 2 weeks. So we get back, so I get back to conclude on that. But I would hope that also we move away from this period of time from procedural meetings that take a long time and have a period of time. And really, either at the executive committee level or the working group, whatever you guys want to do, we drill down on this and make some recommendations. The board needs to decide, but organizational development is the only thing we have to do right now. We've all that OD work over the last 2 years in pursuit of being able to do the grants. Now, it's either you're going to have an organization that moves forward, or it's a great task force and some volunteers help. There's no, one of the things I got out of Steve's message today was there's no outside force. There's no Office of Sustainable Communities that's going to have a follow-on grant that's going to support this going forward. So it's going to happen. It's going to happen because the people around the table, the people that we've engaged, 1,000 people we've involved in private grants, several thousand people we've involved in this effort. I think it's important enough to carry on, to build out this capacity, to continue to collaborate, and to make it happen in those places where decisions actually do get made at the metro level or county level. You and I had a great conversation last week about just getting on, taking this material and that steamer trunk full of information and start working it with your communities in your 3 counties where there's a lot of good stuff. So part of this is, that's a really practical work program. We're going to do this, and you and I have that conversation about how do we take this stuff and use it with Lorraine County and want 4 or 5, don't forget to leave a bunch of copies, 4 or 5 more copies of this because you're using this to work with your staff to get into the weeds of the stuff that they can use in Lorraine County, not just your plan. If you have to use that part of the tuition, you start to do the same thing, looking for them to do that. So it'll happen ad hoc, but it can't happen in a way that NEOSCC's successor is a key part of it. Effective, efficient.
Yes.
You know, it seems like the 3 month I know that a lot of the decisions about the new 2.0 have to be made in government structure. Is there a need to wait 3 months to convene that group? I mean, we have, I think that once we do the solicitation of current board members that are interested, we can move forward. I don't think, I think we're losing a lot by waiting 3 months.
So it's 30 plus.
Well, I don't think all 33 would join, first of all, and so, and I guess what I'm saying about the leveraging the board members that want to participate, that's the case, but I don't think, we had a hard time getting a quorum today. So I don't think we're going to have 33 board members who are beating down our door to participate in this. Ideally, we had talked about a board of about 20. So we'll see how it turns out. I guess we won't really know until we hear from the existing board members what they want to do.
Tracy, remember we did a survey several months ago, and more people, as I recall, more board members wanted to be members of the organization than what they
Not
serve on the board of
necessarily on the
executive.
board. Right.
And the time commitment is somewhat daunting. So that's, even if you're still interested, your willingness to continue at the pace that you're doing is maybe not possible.
Yeah, I mean, we've talked about the board organization and then forms. At one point, I know we had talked about it as being primarily business and other interests other than government. And we've talked about it with government, and I think probably as we've talked about it, more and more public-private partnership might be the best way to sort of describe it.
There would be a unique region-wide public-private partnership that we could get people. It would be very, align very well with sort of what seems to work in the Eastern Ohio networks, regional radio, Youngstown, Cleveland, Radford. You hear the same collaborative framework and work with our colleagues and across the line and so on and so forth. That goes all strings.
And some of it ends up coming down to what it's going to look like relative to the agenda, and who wants to sign up for that. The business community, and I use that word very broadly, is interested, but they need to see more concrete, a more concrete agenda of what the organization is going to do, and we've got some work to do there. If we could get 30 members who are absolutely gung-ho and want to be board members and actively participate in the organization, well, we probably would think about having 30 members then instead of 20. I mean, it just sort of depends on initially how many of the existing board, and then, as I said, I'm having some conversations with some folks, and at the executive committee level, and I'll repeat it here at the board level, think about it from your agency and your spectrums. Who do you know as an organization or an individual that would be a good board member to better implement the plan that we've now developed? Let me know. We can certainly work with you to try and recruit that. We can have private conversations, and then we can follow up with more official kinds of invitations.
Christine has talked about accelerating the process, and I'm suggesting whatever group put together meets every 2 weeks or a month, just to move a specific agenda forward, not just necessarily need to procedurally like we have there. How do you propose to accelerate this process? The 90 days is set really by the final closing, but if the internal work is done in 10, 20 days, 30 days, more power to it. Is there a way that this group could lock themselves in the room and negotiate a deal, make something happen, and sit down with the business community and say, this is what it is?
Well,
There's the collective intelligence in this room to move this thing forward.
I mean, as I have learned in some meetings I've been in, it's not that easy to get somebody to sign on to be a board member for the business community to represent their organization is not that easy. A lot of folks will do it as individuals, but as a organization, there's a little bit more, I'll call it bureaucracy involved, and a little bit more time needed to be able to lay out a case and put put some materials together and get that done. And what we don't want to do, I really want to get this done as fast as possible, but I don't want to just arbitrarily select another board because we have to select another board. We do need a little bit more thoughtfulness in the individual board members. And short of deciding an exact number and splitting them up between the 4 metro areas, which could be, if that's what we want to do, we could get to that too.
Along the lines of what Chief was saying, I think that he was referring to losing momentum on say, our collaborative efforts. Maybe a creative way to approach a working group that doesn't necessarily a permanent board. So I think there may be some ways, and I guess I'm also thinking of the organizational part, and then there's the working part. Under the public comments referred to, not just have procedural meetings, but more substantive meetings. I think that's probably what the goal of the strategic doing exercise was, to get us into some strategic doing. I'm not sure where that sits at this time, but that was a more substantive kind of attempt to move into action, move into doing some strategic things, which isn't precisely the same as the organizational piece. So I kind of see the momentum being a little bit on the doing side as opposed to the organizational side.
That's a good one.
And so I haven't been sure how to articulate that, but it seems to me that there, and I do think there's a connection between our ability to get into some action together and our demonstration to any prospective board members that there is something substantive for them to be involved in. So those are some thoughts that I've had. It seems to me, and this goes to the issue of staffing also, I don't think, and I think this came out in the strategic doing exercise a little bit, because I think Ed referred to some organizations he's worked with that didn't have staffing, but they were able to get into action. So I don't think we should wait till we have staffing in order to begin to try to get into action. And I think our perception of what staffing we need ought to be based in part on our efforts to get into action as opposed to simply staffing for the sake of staffing, and then we decide what, then we rely on staff to tell us what, I'm not very confident in that order of things. So I don't know how to unlock that, but those are some thoughts that I've had about how we unlock this. I kind of see it as a whole piece, not isolated things. There's board here, there's staff here, there's implementation here. They are all integrated, and somehow we need to think in those terms and unlock this with all of that in mind. And somehow we need to try to find things that we can try to implement together that isn't necessarily dependent on staffing or the final form of the board. These are some observations, just some thoughts. Again, I don't know how to unlock that, but I think we need to have that thought. So it brings us back to the strategic doing exercise. I'm not sure whether we actually produce anything.
Yeah, and I think the strategic doing exercise was both to get a flavor for what it's all about, but also to begin to prioritize what we could actually do. And much of that, as we talked about, is going to happen in our individual spheres. At the MPO level or at the organizational level, certainly at the metro level. Also, the partnership with Purdue doesn't end with just the workshops that they have. The workshop that I attended, they're talking about perhaps bringing to Northeast Ohio so many people could participate in it and take it back to their elected organizations to move that forward. Also, relative to just NEOSCC, there's a number of things that they have put into the agreement with us that I need to still review, but it looks pretty good. Talks about more sessions that they will have with us, and talks about a summit or a March meeting where we convene folks from the community to work with us on getting these things. So there are things that are coming along with that. But you're absolutely right. There's that doing part along with the government's part that has to get done.
We did do a follow-on session, I think, last week, and skate on our grouping on assessment of projects, was going on. The definition of vacation time, like, got away with some data. Did that prove it, I mean, as a way forward, is that something you still want to pursue?
What we discussed last week?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think so.
So that could go, and what we did do is strategic to broken into two groups. And this group in here was more in the Long Valley interests and interests.
Yeah, and then NOACA.
You were the other big one, more interested in the brownfield opportunity sites. The Eastern Group was more interested in the assessment of what are the current projects. And I think
Projects and economic development.
I think that's still a live issue. It's just vacations
But to your question, Hunter, of how do we meet or how do we get to?
How do you move forward? You can't put it on staff. You got to figure out a way to convene and say this is what we're going to present to school.
So we have our sort of subcommittee on communication. It's meeting after this. Subcommittee on strategic doing relative to the mapping and such that will be going on with the NPOs. And then I guess we need sort of one more subcommittee, and that would be for the board member solicitation. I'd be glad to take volunteers for working with me on that. In addition to having all of you go back and think hard about whether you want to be on the board again, and or if you have others who you think would be good members and contacts to get there. And I think 2 weeks is probably a good time frame. I think for all practical purposes then, we suspend the July board meeting. I mean, that's what we're trying to do, is suspend that, but I find it's kind of helpful for people to get information and create a bureaucracy for people to come back to. July being summertime, maybe we suspend that meeting.
It might be easier if people are interested just to run it or something that just keeps people informed. Getting people to come, and we're trying to be core and quality system also. Got too many programs that just do, we got the holidays.
So we could suspend the meeting for July, not before August, and then use the time in between for these group groups to meet every 2 weeks to get the work done, and then report back in August. And of course, if we can pull it all together before that, that would be great too. Any comment on that?
Kill us to suspend the July meeting.
Okay. I have a motion to suspend the July meeting.
So, second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Great, okay, motion passes, so we'll suspend the meeting for July, we'll reconvene in August, and by August, we should have everything to a point. By August, what I'd like to do is have all of the things that have to get done with HUD done, and have board members identified and spoken to, and perhaps even assembled, and have the mapping tool in place.
Good mapping, this is the coordination.
Well, maybe it's just strategic doing,
Yeah.
next level of strategic doing.
There was some discussion after our last exercise about something in Southeast Ohio. And we were trying to contact them, because they're out.
The board solicitation looks to be a lot of
Well, I'll get with,
Let me suggest one idea, that is, it might make sense, or suggest putting the word back on the MPO COG directors. So Sarah knows, when we were going through the whole process of working this on do a regional scale plan for rather distinct metros, having those 5 folks representing their constituencies, so to speak, and their concerns, since you, together you represent all 70 plus elected officials. It was very helpful to us as staff, and it certainly was very helpful to us. It might make sense for you to convene a group around how, that question of board membership in terms of how does that play out in your individual areas. It's going back, it's working the scales between the local and the regional. So it feels right in Eastgate, but also works from that region as well. So it might make some sense to just convene the 5 members of those groups, at least as a working group, to say, okay, what are you hearing in NOACA area versus what's going on down there in Akron? How does this come together with something that works? It's just an idea, but I know from a staff perspective, from a consultant perspective, we could not have done this project without the, we're meeting, Sarah, what, we're meeting every 2 weeks or more frequent or something, or once a month. We had, every time there was a critical, we had a once a month regular meeting as needed. But once a month there was a critical decision on what census numbers do we use, what are these projections, how do we present this information, are these themes something that are going to blow up in our face in Lorraine or Warren or whatever. We rely on the field knowledge of those directors. That's not the spirit of somebody else's skills, but that's the skill that you bring to the table as managers of coalitions.
What do we call ourselves? Northeast Ohio Regional Council?
NOARC. Yeah, we had Northeast Ohio Regional Council.
Yeah, it was just the MPOs and that.
Yeah. But the idea again was to bring together that, to pool that knowledge, to make sure that no region, no metro felt like they were being left out, that their concerns different the way we go forward.
yeah, I mean, certainly as we look to select board members, there's going to have to be some regional balance as well. We can't have all the members from one place.
All I'm suggesting is, in the interest of time, you already have a functioning, working partnership between those 2 John Getchy, Joe Hadley, Jason Segedy, Bob Now, Bob Jeffs, and Grace Wiltshire. And that was a group of Chris Horn and Sarah and I and Jeff and we report to you and say, here's where we are on this, here's the schedule we're going out to, we want to take it publicly to the board and know that we're not going to get any landlords. I think we have some of the same issues here. How does, what works in Canton works differently in Youngstown, works differently in Marine than it does in York. I'm only suggesting in the interest of time, you might want to reconvene for the purposes of having that discussion.
Well, I might tie into also we discussed about earlier with the 4 distinct parts of the 12 counties. And starting the implementation phase, looking at 4 parts instead of 1 12-county region to start with. What we can do in our 3 counties, and Chris can do in her 5 counties, and Jason can do in his area. And have that initial discussion, see where that is.
And I think that approach is, speaking for myself, with limited time to be available to be devoted to this, I'd rather focus my efforts on, I agree with everything Mike said. If I had to choose, I'd rather focus on the what part of it more than the growing the board. And as Grace said, if a situation comes up and Grace comes to me and says, hey, this person from such and such company in Akron, could you help facilitate? I mean, I'm there, but and because I like what John said, I mean, I think the regional approach, it doesn't just have to be focused around the board membership. I think if I understand what John's getting at, and it plays into what Mike said, it might make sense as we talk about the what, to talk about what from the report is most crucial, say in Greater Cleveland versus Greater Youngstown versus Greater Canton and Akron. Because I think there are aspects of what was recommended in our, you know, with our 9 goals and our larger universe of implementation steps that are more relevant to certain, and I think even within each of our geographic areas, and you know, the issues in Akron will be different than the ones in Barberton, are different than the ones in Canton. So I think, because the reason I'd rather focus, I mean, Mike kind of already said it best, but you would ask the question in your statement about what are people saying. I mean, I think one of the challenges right now is people aren't saying anything because they don't really know what we're doing. And I think, being honest, we don't, I don't want to imply we don't know what we're doing, but I don't think we have enough to reach out to someone with in a lot of cases. So.
Distributed process is a little slow. So it's not going to be so good so we're working different aspects of this in place in different metros and we have those areas.
Well, eventually you got to put the mindset and the commitment of the communities out there that they can come to us for help. Just like my members, they know if they want an operation regional commission, they have to come to us. If they want highway money, they come to us. If they want EDA money, come to Sarah, they come to myself. The same thing if we rebrand this into not NEOSCC, like we talked about earlier,
Call it Vibrant Neo.
Vibrant Neo. There's a person out there, they know they've got a plot where they want to redevelop. It's good, why would we go with that? We've got to build that up. And that's what Jason and I are talking about. On our end of it, doing that building. And on your end of it, pulling the board out of it. We've got to build that desire out there. We want to understand why we're doing it.
John, how do you do that shorter? What's the best, fastest, strategic way to do it?
And I'm going to say, I think it has to do with who your board members are going to be. Many, many people that I've been talking to want to know who else has signed up. And I can tell you right now, what people don't want is this same board because they felt that this board was a planning board. And if NEOSCC is going to become Vibrant Neo 2040 and it's going to be more about implementation, then they want it to look different too. What's that?
Forward back. We want the board to be different. We just invited us all back.
Well, I invited you all back because I've been asked to make sure leveraging, but the board itself cannot be the same. It's not gonna be the same 33 people who have been working to plan, to develop the plan, the framework, the vision. Those were one skill sets of organizations, and, you know, it's gotta have more than just that.
And that, I think, touches on, I agree, and that touches on, not to go back to our, you know, because I know those of you that have been here for years, we've had this conversation over and over about where we had those back and forth discussions philosophically going way back to the beginning of, are we fulfilling the terms of the HUD grant, or are we building up kind of a collaborative, action-oriented organization? And I think we did both in a lot of ways, but I think now I see it as kind of an opportunity. There's not the HUD grant anymore. There's not, I think what we found is through experience, at least through my own two lenses, is we don't need 6 regional planning agencies anymore. So I think, you know, the aspiration isn't to create a giant organization that would replicate or kind of augment even what NPOs do. It would be more something that kind of puts together all of that information and furthers what's recommended in the plan. I think that is a little different framework than the way we approach the version 1.0. And I think Grace is right that with the perception that's out there of what was done in the first phase, it does behoove us to have you know, a different identity going forward. Not that we should be building on what we've already done, but we need to change and transform it.
And I think some of the sentiment that I've been hearing as well is the board members have to be the first in command, meaning that we can't go 4 levels down into an organization and have a person representing that organization that isn't the decision maker for that organization. So that if we recruit a business, it's got to be somebody who's, if not the CEO themselves, then very close to the top, as opposed to just someone that participates in another activity. And so there's, which is one of the reasons people are hesitant to sign on until they know who else is there.
Particularly among CEOs, no substitutes.
I think also, you know, Anthony, as we're talking about inviting all 33 members back, certainly, as I mentioned earlier, not all 33 want to. We've already taken that survey. But those who do want to, that has to be sort of reviewed as well, because it's going to have some geographic as well as other kind of balance. So, for example, if all 5 of the MPO directors want to be on it, that's probably not that practical. We already talked about maybe having a rotation or just 1 or 2 of us or something like that. And we might have to decide amongst ourselves. And you know, we all want to be part of it. We might have to decide amongst ourselves. No, maybe just one should do it this time, and you know, it rotates, or there's a spot for that or something.
And I think that points to the board is very important. I don't want to downplay its importance, but I see it as it's a means to an end, and it's the entity that's there to help us get into action. So I think what Grace said makes a lot of sense to me, that there are lots of avenues potentially, and we should try to create those for people to get plugged in and participate, even if that means that they're not on the board. Because Hunter raised the executive committee, we talked about was it 700 or 900 people that we were
Almost 900.
Yeah, 900 that we had kind of made contacts with and reached out to through the work streams. And I mean, when I've spoken to local activists like Akron, even over the last couple of months, people have said, hey, what's going on with that NEOSCC thing? How can I get involved? And their aspiration isn't to want to be a board member. You know, they just want to know, they want to help us, and I think in turn have assistance from us, you know, at times. So I think, and that kind of goes to our communications meeting, although that's kind of a means to an end too. The communications is to build the infrastructure in order to make that happen. It won't populate it with substance, but that's where I think I mentioned that to the executive committee for those that weren't here. The communications is, I think, a very mission critical forward, because we have to find ways to, once we have something to communicate, to effectively reach all those people that have reached out to us in the past. And because it goes back to what you said earlier, Hunter, that we don't, I think, want to foster the perception already anymore than is already out there that, oh, well, that was just about $100 grand, and now it's closing up shop.
I think the easiest way to keep alive is keep virtual. It's not the cheapest thing, virtual. But to keep an up-to-date webpage, feed information, sort of keep stories down. There's things virtual you can do.
Twitter and Facebook are free, we just need to find out what to communicate.
Right, exactly. So, I mean, that's one of, we built up that infrastructure, we've got a presence, we got, those 900 people who signed up as fighting champions, it's several thousand that participated in this new members. We've got a good base to work with.
So, I guess I will continue to meet with some potential board members and send out the letter to all of the existing board members. Those of you who have ideas, please contact me. I know that some of you can help me, so I will contact you even if you don't contact me.
The other thing along those lines too, I think we continue to make presentations of the members that we have. Steve Litt continues to weave in vibrant stories. That's not a bad idea. But if there are speaking engagements or things that you think, we should present this to our board or group, or Kathy, if there's a forum or some areas where we could weave these together. We had that whole discussion about from Ohio versus this, and how it's all together. But they just fit in the legacy cities piece. So it's several of us love to talk, so it's not a big deal. But if you hear things, Angie, your planning commission, council must hear, I don't know, but you'll hear something. So you'll have some opportunities. Just let me know. With the time limitations we have, staff limitations we have, we can certainly continue to keep the presence of the presentations. We are moving away, and I've had this discussion with Grace, we're moving away from any more focus on sort of the big number of 175,000 animals, which we as a board use, I think, in part to get people's attention. We have had some pushback consistently from the city of Cleveland on that, because their concerns moderate. More importantly, perhaps, but that's not unimportant, Tom Byer has noted to me that but the trends that we use to project have seen some significant changes in the last three, 4 years. There's some evidence of demographic shifts as well as a much tighter real estate market. Some of the extreme conditions that we've projected based on the trends may not come to pass. The fact of the matter is, relatively, they probably will. The focus needs to be on what we can do to make ourselves more fiscally sound.
Well, I think we need to focus on the alternate scenario. I mean,
Yeah.
that was all the base case trend
Right.
scenario, and that was part of the planning process, but we're now through that planning process. And we should be focusing on the alternate scenario.
So that winds up being part of that messaging. We have a clear alternative, which is doing things differently, and it involves the elements that we're talking about, and that will have an effect on our budgets. It's the budget numbers, not the dependent numbers, the building numbers. The budget, it's the net budget number that has got people's attention. And again, even if it may not be as extreme, it still shows relative strengths and weaknesses, and it shows how the alternative, the advocate, makes things better for everybody. So I think part of the messaging is really the this is something we all need to internalize, is basically move from planning and getting people's attention to advocating for perspective that we describe in fact. Let's see how we can make a much more positive message. That that's something we're clearly upon, and that it's easy to advocate for because it's applied common sense and it makes a difference to people's budgets.
To that end, you sparked something. I was thinking about this when we were talking about the Purdue GIS piece. I know there was recently a very detailed survey of every property done in Lorraine. There's a similar effort that was funded that's going on in Akron right now. Literally every single property in the city being photographed and inventoried as the condition. I mean, that's just speaking for myself personally, one of the big aspirations I would have out of what we recommended would be to find ways to rebuild neighborhoods, to rebuild housing to replace all the. Akron's done a great job of tearing it down and not having it reach a critical mass, but no one's got a great plan for rebuilding any of it. And so I think one of our, what I'd like to see NEOSCC do in our region would be to help kind of convene that conversation. And not that the city's not working on it, but help bring in, especially maybe private sector people that actually build things, start into the conversation somehow. And that just reminded me that's an example where I think we just have to find what our niche is, where our organization, Fiber Neo, isn't necessarily tripping over what other people are doing, but we're adding some value. Like Mike, I think today, I'm not sure what that niche is myself, but that's why I think we need to collaborate.
At this point, the essence of strategic doing is applied intuition. I think we have a 3-month strategic doing period. This is knowing what we know, knowing what we feel. How do we, if that feels right, do it. That's what we know needs done, and we saw a little bit of that as we brought together the homebuilders. Said they want to talk to them. Those things that make sense. People will believe us. We need you.
Okay. Next item is the financial report, which was attached. Any questions or comments on the financial report? And moving on, do we have any old business? Any new business?
A quick question. You talked about this system, this kind of live information system that you guys. It's hard to picture just the breadth of that information. It's apparently tied into government source information, and it's updated on a continuous basis. And it sounds like maybe national information, also local information. Again, I don't know what the information, but I know that we had an exercise as part of our HUD grant where we did some gathering of a lot of information, and we have coordinated with auditor's offices. There's a lot of information that's sitting in each county that's generated on a continuous basis through reappraisals, appraisals, assessment of the condition of property, et cetera. This is happening all the time. It's a perpetual thing. It occurred to me, and what triggers me asking this is what you described with Purdue. And the question I had at that time, is there a way to keep that locked rather than it simply being a one-time gathering of information? In other words, some sort of coordination of all. One thing the government does is it assembles and provides information. And there's a lot of investment, a lot of time that's put into that on a continuous basis in each county. It seems to me to integrate, to get the full advantage of integration with the type of system Purdue has, we should think about whether we can So it's just a question that I've had in my mind. I think the Purdue situation triggered a little bit more. I think when we think about that, it seems a little insurmountable, but these are the raw materials that we are already producing. We don't have to go out and begin to do it. We already do it. We simply don't. We don't assemble it. We don't necessarily utilize it on an ongoing basis. So that's my question. Maybe one of these strategic doing issues, but I think it's fairly fundamental as a tool. It's not an end in itself. It's merely a tool. But government, it's one of those unique things government provides, which is information. So.
No, but I think that is the point, is that theirs is base information and they've got the technology, but we could overlay our own data on top of that.
Okay, and I guess that's the question, how broad is how broad are we going?
Okay, and that I don't have an answer for, right, so we would have to talk a little bit more about that as we're working with them. At this point, they've said it's our NEOSCC data sets, but, and I would assume that what we use as part of the NEOSCC data sets is exactly what you're talking about, but how current is it and how do we keep it fresh?
Right. Error, correct if I'm wrong. The auditor's data that went into land use maps, which gathered from 12 county auditors. It's done 2 years ago for this plan by the field staff or the respective GIS staff. It should be possible for that staff to some sort of real-time cycle per year, and not after every appraisal, but some sort of real-time cycle to go and solicit that information. I think we did have Mark Sally in our process complete his work for us looking at the universe of capacity that we have, and that is something. So if you have time, and brief phrase on that as well. We kind of finished that, but we were finishing on a bunch of other stuff. But that might be a piece of technical background for the Purdue folks. But to your bigger question of what went into the our database, the database we created, land use database, 1.8 million discrete parcels, gathered from the county auditors at one point in time by five GIS. And then we added that to that listing, the Division 17 generalized zoning for foreign jurisdictions. It should be updated, and if this is an organization that goes on, it has participation from those. It's going to be a work program, I have a decision about every 2 to 3 to 4 years. I don't know what the cycle will be, but it's not every 10 years, it's not every month.
And I was just going to add, Mike, to what you said as another thought. I mean, I think that's a great point, that is a key role of government. It's already there, and you know, auditors' information, for example, it is used, but it's used for one purpose, for their purpose, exactly.
And it may be impossible, but my notion is that with a fully integrated system, you don't have to go solicit it every 10 years or 5 years. It becomes an integrated system where it's always available. It's not a solicitation and you update. It is an integrated system that always is current.
Which is what theirs is, right?
Exactly.
Can we have our data do
if we think in terms of soliciting every 5 years, that's all we're going to do. If we think in terms of an integrated system that's constantly updated, then we will move toward that. And I think that is a better solution. And that provides something to people who need that information that we don't provide. That is one of those unique things that we could provide that is a tool, it's not an end in itself.
I don't disagree. That would be a different type of negotiating that we have. But it's a much more useful tool than Andrew. You can open the screen up and now those appraisal, that appraisal data that I use it is as of this morning.
And I was going to say exactly what you said, Mike, that I think that would be part of the value would be we create something that there isn't an information, and then I think that would also free us up to analyze that data and do things with it. And that, I think, was one of the things in version 1.0 that we did pretty well. I mean, when you look at all the ink that we got in the media, 99% of it had to do with our analysis of trends and a lot of the articles Steve Flynn wrote. And well, I think, my aspiration would be that we would go beyond just analyzing it. I think the next step then is convening people around what we find through the analysis and getting into some sort of action. But I think to convene people or have action, you have to know what the trends are and what the problems are. And I think we did do that pretty well. And I think what Mike's suggesting is we would figure out how to do that even better and have a better analytical framework to build on.
But hold that thought, because that might be one of the things you use to develop research. And I think part of the challenge here is getting simplicity. Analyzing, convening, and acting with a simple message. If you're going to work on messages, Jason, build on that. It's really good. It's a good start.
On that note, any further